One of my greatest early musical first loves was pop punk, so it was a great pleasure that a few weeks ago I had the chance to sit down with the Florida band Mayday Parade. Mayday Parade have been a staple of the pop punk scene for decades now, and this year saw them take their 3 Cheers for 20 Years tour across the world, playing gigs in their native America as well as Australia and Southeast Asia, with plans to tour the UK in early 2026. The band's latest EP, Sad, is the second part of a planned trilogy of releases, with this second instalment foregrounding nostalgia and the passing of time as the subject of many of the record's songs. I spoke with the frontman of the group, Derek Sanders, about that new EP and what it felt like to mark such a milestone as a band. We also talked about how it felt to have the band's original co-vocalist Jason Lancaster on stage with them at a show in Dallas this year. I kicked off the conversation by asking Derek how it felt to play the When We Were Young festival in Las Vegas this year, an unashamed celebration of the pop punk and emo scene that was all the rage in the early noughties.
Man, yeah, it was so much fun. That's our third time doing When We Were Young. We did the first year, the third year, and then this year, the fourth year. And I mean, yeah, it's just, I enjoy being at that festival, performing as much as just being a fan and being able to watch all these bands that I grew up loving. And it's one of those things where you're doing this for 20 years, you've got so many friends and people that you know, people that you haven't seen, in some cases in many years, you know. So it's just kind of like nonstop, you know, going from, you know, the bus to the green room to the stage or whatever you're going to do, you're going to stop like 6 or 7 times on the way there to see somebody and chat and catch up. And, it's just such a cool experience. And, obviously, I mean, I feel like, you know, when it first was announced a couple years back, everybody was kind of skeptical whether it was even real, including like all the bands. But the fact that not only is it, you know, obviously real, but it's, you know, run so well and done so well, and it's such a big event and, you know, sells out. There's so many people, I think is like a real kind of validation of, you know, where the whole, if you want to call it the emo scene or whatever you want to call it, you know, where that is right now. Kind of, I don't know, just the fact that it feels like what we were all a part of, you know, for me in high school and starting this band, is impactful and meaningful. Whenever, you know, you can play a festival like that and just, you know, see that many people loving this music. Yeah, it's really unlike anything else. It was a great time.
That's great to hear, man. Yeah, I mean, based over here in the UK, but I remember when the first festival was announced, and I was like, wow, this is such a stacked lineup. And like you say, every year they've had this kind of amazing lineup year on year. Is there any like bands in particular that you see kind of bump into people when you're going and playing your sets and things like that? Are there any particular bands that you see that you go way back with, that it's always such a joy to bump into in the kind of festival lineups like this?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I feel like there's like two sides of it. Like there's the bands that I don't necessarily know personally, but I just love their music. You know, some of the highlights for that have been, you know, Jimmy Eat World and Saves the Day, Marie. Well, I'm sorry, Emery. We do know those guys from touring with them. Yeah, there's bands that like, you know, Thursday, that we never like toured with, but we just, you know, bands that meant a lot to me in high school, that I love going to see. And then there's, yeah, the bands. I think this year, Set Your Goals. It was my first time seeing those guys in, I mean, it has to be like 15 years or something. And it was just so cool to bump into them and to see them perform. The Breathe Carolina guys, you know, yeah, just a lot of that, like these people that we toured with, you know, so long ago and we're very close with, and then it just hasn't really, our paths haven't crossed too many times since then. So that's, I mean, it's like magic, you know, just to be able to see all those people in one place.
That's awesome, man. So looking back over the kind of year, I know we're at the end of the year now, but you've had a pretty packed schedule this year. I know you guys were in Australia and even like Singapore and the Philippines a few months ago. What's it been like to go to places like Oz and, you know, parts of Southeast Asia and kind of see the fandom kind of, just welcome you with open arms? What has it been like to go back to those places and kind of play shows there this year?
Yeah, I mean, this year has been just like special all around. I feel like the 20-year anniversary of the band, we sort of put together a set for the North America tour was the first leg of the Three Cheers for 20 Years tour. And I feel like we all knew this was coming, the 20-year anniversary. And I guess I felt like I was, mentally prepared for it, but it wasn't until it was, here and happening and putting together the set. And I kind of talk about it on stage for those shows, but I had never really, looked back to the beginning of the band, really like that in depth. It was like we're always moving forward. The train is always moving forward, and we're looking ahead. And so whenever it came time to put that set together, I really wanted to do anything I could to make it, special and unique and kind of stand out from what we'd done in the past. So I looked back to see the earliest videos I could find of the band, live sets and interviews and just whatever I could find. And there was something about that where it was like, you almost kind of forget that we were like kids, I mean, like I was 19 years old, whenever we started the band, and just seeing how, different we were, how young we were, how, green we were. And I don't know. It's like I hadn't really acknowledged that. And so, it felt really special to put a lot of that together into the set. There's even a clip. I kind of cut together some interview clips to play on the screen, during the show. And there's a clip of Brooks talking about how, there's no way we're still going to be doing this when I'm 40, and now I'm 39 years old. Brooks is 40 years old. And so, I mean, just, fun stuff like that. And it really just kind of, I feel like I feel all the nostalgia and the love in a way that I hadn't really before. So doing that tour and then doing the same tour in Australia and Southeast Asia and kind of taking it around the world has been just so incredible. And we're just so grateful. It's also all of those shows were the biggest headline shows that we've done in North America and Australia and Southeast Asia. And so, that's pretty wild 20 years in to be doing it at the highest level for our band. So, I mean, it's hard to even express how just, grateful we are that this is what our life has become and that we're, a part of something that, just feels important. And, meeting people and hearing the stories of ways that we've been able to impact them or help them. I mean, it's just, we're so grateful for all of it.
That's amazing. Well, let's talk about those 20 years, because that's the kind of banner of the tour. 20 years off the band, and you've mentioned that you're playing these video clips, kind of in between songs, live bit on your sets. Revisiting that kind of footage, revisiting those interviews. Is there anything particularly surprising or a particularly kind of surprising piece of footage that you found when you were digging through those archives where you were like, oh my God, I can't even remember doing this? Or was there anything that surprised you that you found digging through those archives to find those kind of interstitial moments between the songs?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, there's a lot of it that I certainly don't remember. And especially like interviews, it's like, wow, I don't remember much of this, and, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things where I would have thought, before going back, I would have, in my head sort of imagined what we would have been like. But like seeing it is really just kind of something else. I think a lot of it is like, it's all so weird. I remember thinking when we were young doing this and, however long into it, thinking I'm never going to be jaded. You know what I mean? As if that was like, I feel like I just had it so wrong in my head. You know what I mean? Like, jaded isn't like, it's not like something that intentionally really happens. It's just that, you do this long enough and
Yeah, of
things
course.
change, like it's just kind of inevitable, and it becomes more of a job, when I think about our daily life on the bus, on tour, the way we
Mm,
are, and then seeing those old videos of us, in a van, or even like the early years on a bus, and just, this excitement and this optimism that, like, sadly kind of inevitably goes away. I mean, even if you do everything right, it's just kind of, it's just part of life, really, and getting
yeah.
older, um and so I feel like that was kind of the, like just look how excited we all were about everything that was happening, and not that we're still not excited about it. It's just you can't be the same,
Yeah.
way that you are when you're 20, 21, doing this and going to places for the first time and seeing the world for the first time. Some of that just kind of has to fade away. So I think that was most of it, is just kind of going, oh, like, look at those kids, like, just, so green, but so excited. And yeah, there's something really, really cool about that.
I bet. I mean, it must be, kind of touring the world in your 20s versus touring it a little later in your life, especially if you have, kind of family commitments and kids and things like that. It changes things quite a lot, I imagine. So when you're kind of, thinking about a tour of this length and a tour of this amount of countries, Derek, of this year, do you have to do kind of like physical preparation to go out there every night and do shows as kind of big as this? And even like you talk about kind of having to do the mental prep to get ready for a tour like this. What kind of preparation goes into to kind of preparing yourself physically and mentally for this kind of tour?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's definitely, physically, for me as a singer, I really have to, or, I make an effort to, weeks in advance, start to prepare, because, your voice is a muscle. And if you go from weeks or months or whatever without singing at that level to playing, on that headline tour, we played for a little over an hour and a half, or maybe an hour and 35 minutes every night. And you're going to lose your voice if you just try to
Close.
just jump into that. So that's always something that I try and keep in mind. And then I will try to, when possible, move around when I'm singing at home, jump around. I'll sometimes run on the treadmill, or at least like
Wow.
walk fast on the treadmill and
Okay.
try to sing while I'm doing it. It really, it's like, once you're in a tour like this tour we're on now, we've been on for a little over a month. We're all, it's easy now. You know what I mean? You're conditioned to it, so it's really just trying to build up that conditioning ahead of time, because it can be a whole lot. And then mentally, I don't know. Honestly, I probably should spend more time analyzing that, because it is it's a really, really weird thing, and it always
Mm,
has been, where it's like you have two lives. You
mm-hmm,
have a life on the road or in the
mm-hmm,
studio or whatever, and then you have a life at home, and you're constantly switching back and forth between these two
mm-hmm,
lives. And to be honest, it usually is a little depressing, um going from either one to the other. Just going from, okay, this was my life. I was at home, I was dad, I was with the kids. Now I'm on the bus, and now everything is just so completely different from what it was. And then same, once you're like, right now we're on this tour, this is my life, I'm used to it. When I go home and have to kind of adjust to that life, there's always a day or two where it's almost a little depressing, because you just feel like you don't know what to do. And I probably should put more effort into trying to prepare myself mentally for that. But I don't know that I do. I just kind of get through it. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it must be tough, and also like traveling through different time zones and then trying to kind of sync calls with loved ones back home. It must be a whole kind of kettle of fish, and then kind of like you say, coming back home and almost having to kind of resensitize yourself to reacclimatize yourself back to home must be pretty tough. Just going back to kind of what's been going on this year. I also know in Dallas that you guys were joined on stage by Jason Lancaster to sing Jamie All Over for your encore. Talk to me a little bit, Derek, about what that was like and how that came about. It sounds really exciting, and I saw the footage. It must have been an awesome moment for you guys.
Yeah, it really was a really special moment. It was a highlight of that tour for me. Well, basically there was a pretty lengthy period of time after he left the band that we didn't really communicate in any kind of way. And then going back, roughly 6 or 7 years ago or so, he and I kind of reconnected. Um, and we've played some acoustic shows together. That's the two of us. And we actually recorded a song together that we released, I don't know, a year or two ago. Um, so we had kind of reestablished, a bit of that relationship. And, Jason just is one of the most talented people I've ever met in my life. And obviously we were really close, going back to the beginning of the band, whenever we started all this. Um, so I just, I love the idea of working with him in some capacity. And, I think a few weeks before that Dallas show, he had texted me about coming out to the show just to come hang and, bring his kids and everything. And it just kind of got me thinking how nice it would be, especially with the circumstances of this being the 20-year anniversary tour and sort of, so much focus on the beginning of the band and how it all started. And it just felt appropriate. And so I talked to the guys about it first, and everybody, loved the idea. And so I asked him, and he was very excited about it. So yeah, it just kind of came together. And that was the first time that we had been on stage, all of us together. Like I said, he and I have done things, but with the whole band and Jason up there, that was the first time since early 2007, on tour with the Plain White Tees was when he left the band. So that was the first time in, I guess, 18 years that we were all up on stage together. But yeah, I feel like it was a really special moment. The crowd seemed to love it. Such a talented singer and performer, so it all sounded great and felt great. And yeah, I'm really glad that we got to do that.
I've seen the footage of the shows, Derek, and yeah, the fans seem to absolutely love it. You can almost see, you're taking an already very lively set, and then when Jason comes on stage, it's almost kind of like an unbelievable moment, and you can see it in the kind of rapturous response from the fans. It seems like there's still like a kind of strong connection between you and Jason. Do you kind of envisage yourself doing any more kind of recorded work with him in the future, or maybe having him join you on stage again? Is that a possibility?
I think so. It's a little tough to say, exactly how all that would go, but I think certainly in one way or another, he and I actually will work on music from time to time, just kind of bounce ideas off each other that we talk about maybe releasing. And I don't know, it's tough because we've been, Mayday Parade has been so busy that there hasn't been a lot of time to focus on that. But we're sort of intentionally trying to take a lot of next year, off or at least not be like this year's been just so busy for us. So next year we're trying to kind of not tour as much and play festivals, but kind of, be home more and really have more time to focus on some of those, outside things that everybody has going on. So I imagine that we'll keep working on music. And then, as far as, us performing together or any of that, we'll have to kind of see how it goes. I have some ideas of things that I would like to happen, but it's always, there's five of us, and it's always I can't really say for sure what's gonna make the most sense. But I love, keeping that connection and that possibility open. I'm hopeful that there'll be more of that kind of stuff in the future.
That sounds great. Well, let's talk about the new EP as well, Derek. It's entitled "Sad," and it's been out in the world for about a month, just over a month now. And it's the second in the trilogy of EPs that you guys have been working on. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you guys came to this idea of kind of a 3 EP project? And what is Sad's place as the second part of that trilogy?
Yeah, for sure. Well, basically, last year, I think around springtime, maybe April or something like that of last year, we went into the studio, and the intention was to get started on our 8th full-length record. And we knew that we weren't going to record the whole album, but we were going to go in and try to get, 7 or 8 songs done, something like that. And then the goal sort of originally was to come back later and record a handful more songs, and then put that together and have our 8th full length. And it was while we were in the studio. We tend to spend more time talking about, big picture stuff like that. Like when we're on tour, it's tough. I mean, everybody kind of has their own schedules and their own things. We don't really spend as much time all, sitting together talking about just, brainstorming band stuff. And when we're in the studio, we all live in a house together essentially. And there's more of that kind of just, spitballing and brainstorming and just kind of throwing out ideas. And, we kind of came to the realization that whatever this was that we were recording was going to be coming out in 2025, which was our 20th anniversary as a band. And so that kind of led us down the path of like, well, what if we tried to, do something different or celebrate that in some way? And we really liked the title, Sweet Sad Sugar. And then we thought, well, with that, it could be 3 parts. Part 1 is sweet, part 2 is sad, part 3 is sugar. And so it just kind of, all of it, once we sort of started going down that road of like, what can we do that's, different and exciting and, bigger than anything we've done before. Before long, we had it kind of like, well, what if we tried a 3-part thing? And it also felt nice because it meant that whatever we were recording in the studio at that time would be, one body of work, versus going in later and kind of putting 2 things together. So that first session ended up becoming Sweet. And then we went into the studio, I want to say January of this year. Gosh, yes, my sense of time is all so messed up.
That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, January of this year, and recorded Sad. And then we actually, a few months, maybe 4 months ago or so, went back to the studio and recorded part 3. So, it's all done. It's all wrapped up. So far it's been so cool. It always kind of has felt in the past like you do all this work preparing for an album, writing all these songs, recording all these songs, the mixing, the mastering, the artwork, the press, the everything. And it just kind of feels like in today's world, it's tough to, just put out a large body of work at one time and then feel like, you're going to tour on that for like 2 years. There's sort of this sense of like, okay, well, what's next? So this way really feels like it's a little bit of, it's a substantial amount of music to come out, but then not too long behind it, you have the next part, and then now Sad is out, and then not too long behind it, we've got, part 3, Sugar, coming out. So it just feels like it's, the moment lasts longer, and there's more excitement to come. And as far as like musically, it's really tough. Sometimes we'll talk about trying to thematically, lean into certain concepts. And we talked about it for part two for sad, that maybe we make it more ballads or more of the sad songs. And, and I think, in theory, that's a great idea, but it's always tough because we get into the studio and then it's really just kind of like, what are the songs we've got? And what is everyone the most excited about, So a lot of times it's like, we don't want to pick the saddest songs if they're not the best songs, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like we just want to, record the best stuff that we have on the table. So I think we, leaned into the sad elements of it a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's still kind of just what we always do, where we get together. We usually have a pool of, 20 songs or however many to work from, and kind of work through them a little bit to see what everyone's the most excited about, and go from there. And that's pretty much how it all came together.
That's great. Well, let's dig into some of those lyrics, Derek, on the album. I've been listening to the EP for the past few weeks, and I want to ask you about the song "One Day at a Time," which is one of my favorite songs on the EP. It opens up with this verse where you say, "If 30 is just a number, then I hope this last one brings me closure." I wanted to ask you what was on your mind as you wrote those lyrics, Derek.
Okay, well, so Brooks, so on the EP, there's 4 songs that I wrote the lyrics to. Brooks wrote that one Day at a Time. So everybody in the band writes. There's 2 of the songs are Jake's, 1 is Brooks, 1 is Alex's, and 4 of them are mine. And I wish I could give you more insight on what Brooks was saying there with that one. But yeah, sorry to disappoint, but I'm not sure exactly what was on his mind.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I know there's another track, I Miss the 90s, and it does seem that nostalgia is, kind of, it's one of the themes on the record, nostalgia and looking back. And obviously that ties into the kind of milestone, of the band, currently. Was there kind of passing a time on your mind and, the other band members' minds whilst you were writing this kind of set songs?
Yes, I think so. I think that's been, sort of the mindset of the band. Maybe one, just because enough time has passed in general, but also with the moment of the 20-year anniversary of the band, and everyone's sort of, looking back in a way we hadn't before. So that's one that I wrote. I miss the 90s. And, I feel like nostalgia is like happiness and sadness at the same time, and I don't know. It feels like, I was born in 1986. I grew up in the 90s. And it really, especially more and more, the more as time goes on, feels like that was like just the peak of humanity and civilization. Like, it just feels like things were so great, and there was all of this optimism about the future. And it's pretty hard to feel that way now. And so I feel like that's, mostly where that kind of came from. But yeah, that's a big point of all of these 3 EPs, I would say, is like the nostalgia, and I don't know if every band gets to a point where that happens or not, but yeah.
It feels like, here in the UK, there's a big 90s kind of revivalist movement going on, and, bands like Oasis, and Blur and Suede and Pulp, all these bands that were huge in the Britpop movement in the 90s are coming back in a big way. And I think, that kind of collective looking back is giving rise to the revival of things like, Warped Tour and When We Were Young. There's a huge kind of, love and adulation for a kind of bygone era where times were simpler. And I think when I was listening to some of the songs on this new EP, Derek, I had that feeling of kind of, like you say, fond and looking back, and feeling kind of very fond of times gone by. Let's talk about the artwork of the EPs. Derek, I know that the one that you've just put out and the previous, the first of the trilogy, they have a similar kind of aesthetic and art direction. How did you settle on this album art for this trilogy of EPs? How did it come about? Who were you working with to kind of get that artwork together?
Yeah, so going back to when we first kind of had the concept of the 3-part release, I sort of started brainstorming just a concept of what it all could look like, because I felt like it would be really cool if the artwork all kind of worked together and came together in a nice way in the end. So originally I kind of had this idea of the circles with different images in each one. I think originally I had flowers in one, I had a black cat in one, and I had kind of like for sad, I think I had like a girl with like a red umbrella and it was raining and she was sad. And so I kind of mocked that up as just like a template. And then we hired Benjamin Lieber. Is the creative director for this project, and we sent everything to him. And he's just phenomenal and super talented, and has a really great eye for these kind of things. So it was just sort of several conference calls and going over different ideas of how this could all go, and we all liked the flowers and sort of keeping that thematically the same for each one, but changing the type of flowers and changing sort of the colors and the feel. So that was a lot of his input, and I feel like it all came together really nicely. And then and there's more to it, obviously, yet to come. But and he's done all the music video stuff and just a lot of stage art production, all that, and he's really, really tremendously talented dude.
That's amazing. Well, looking at the going back to the longevity of the band, Derek, the lineup of the band has stayed pretty constant for the 2 decades, and not many bands who've been doing this for as long as you guys have can attest to that. So what is it about the connection between you guys that has kept you going for this amount of time? And has it always been pretty constant, or have there been lulls in that relationship as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's always. I mean, obviously, the rockiest sort of period was early on when Jason left. That was kind of a difficult hurdle to get past. But other than that, it's always been pretty smooth, and I think a lot of it is the fact that we really did kind of grow up together. I mean, I've known Brooks, one of the guitar players. I met him when I was 12, and we started playing music together immediately. I mean, the day that I met him, he came over to my house with his guitar, and we jammed in my garage for hours, and I've played in many different bands with him, and it's kind of the case for everybody. Jeremy and Alex were in a band together, Jake and Jason were in a band together, and then Jake, Jason, and Alex were in a band together, and me and Brooks and Jeremy, we were all kind of in all these different bands until we found our way into this one. And so I think that's a lot of it, is that there was already a pretty, well-established, friendship and brotherhood between all of us before we even started. I think it's just that, we're all, I would say, pretty reasonable people, pretty level-headed people. There's nobody who's much of a diva, so it's really rare that we get into arguments or disagreements, or, I mean, there's things that we'll disagree on, but it never gets nasty, and I I think that's a lot of it. And then also, I mean, just the reality of it is that a lot of bands don't, we've always operated where every member in the band is equal, has an equal vote in how things go. Is money is split evenly. Even if I write 100% of the song, if it's a Mayday Parade song, we all five split the publishing on it, and that's not the way it goes for a lot of bands. And
Yeah.
that just inevitably, I feel like the majority of the time when you have these conflicts with band members leaving and being like, a lot of times it's like that, where there's one guy who kind of has more of the power and is able to, sort of dictate the decisions and is making more money, and it just leads to this, animosity and yeah. So I feel like that's just kind of a big part of it for sure. But yeah, it's one of the things that I'm most proud of is that it has been, the five of us, everything that we've done in this band, we've done together. And it's just, it's crazy to even imagine somebody leaving and somebody else coming in, and how strange that would be at this point,
I mean, it must feel like it must feel like you have two families in many ways. One which is your actual family, and the one family that you tour and write music with, and have gone on this epic journey with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a level of, how close we are that really is, like family. And because we have spent so much, I've spent more time with these guys than probably, anybody else in my life in the last 20 years. And, it's also, we run a business together, we live together, we work together, there's so many aspects of it. And the fact that we do this thing that's pretty unusual, that the everyday person doesn't really probably have a great understanding of what being in a touring band is like. And just so many, shared experiences, and so many I mean, it's like a dream, I mean, it's like the stuff that movies are made of, getting to go out in a van or whatever, travel the world and play music. I mean, it's just so many amazing experiences that we've shared together. So they're my brothers for sure. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, just before we finish up, Derek, I want to ask you about, one of your many big songs, Jamie All Over. I mean, that is so synonymous with the kind of, emo and pop punk, scene, probably one of the era's biggest songs. When you play that live, every night, does it still feel like your song, or has it become, something else that is kind of surpassed the band, become bigger than the band?
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, it's a little bit of both. In a lot of ways, you'd think that we'd, be a little bit sick of it maybe, or a little bit like, okay, it's not, some of the enthusiasm is gone, or any of that, but it's still usually one of my favorite, if not my favorite moments of the set, just because of, the impact of it, and, firing into the song and seeing the crowd light up and sing along, and the energy of it is, really just such an amazing moment. But yeah, there is something weird about kind of, what it has become, and also how long it took for that to happen. I feel like, we've always played that song, but it wasn't till, I want to say, the last like 6 or 7 years that it became like, oh, that's like the song that you have to play last. I feel like for a while there, it was kind of, even with maybe Jersey or a couple, it was like there were a few songs from the album. And honestly, I feel like it was the blow up of the whole emo night scene, where that kind of became, a staple song at those emo nights. And then you really kind of saw it take off on, streaming, and just kind of got a big lead above so many of the others. And so in a lot of ways, I'm grateful that has been the case, but it is, there's something strange about all of that. It's kind of hard to put into words, I guess. But no, I mean, I still love the song. I still love performing it, and it's it means a lot to have a song like that does you could play it an emo night and most of the crowd's gonna sing along. I mean, there's a lot of bands I feel like from our era that were just as big or bigger that haven't been able to have a song that still is able to connect in the same way in kind of this new whatever you want to call it, but the sort of throwback emo scene, and so yeah, we're very grateful for it.
That's great. Well, just one final question. What can we expect from you guys going forward? I know obviously we're still waiting the final part of the trilogy. So what can we look forward to with that release? And what's next for you guys? You plan to come to the UK soon?
Yes. So yeah, part 3 will come out. I don't know exactly when, but maybe around spring next year. I'm really excited about it. Going into it, if I'm being completely honest, I was a little bit nervous. So, again, this was 3 or 4 months ago. We went into the studio, and I felt like we had been in the studio so much to do Sweet and Sad. I was like, we're tapped. I was like, we're out of ideas. Like, we're not. I did not go into it with a lot of confidence, but I think it might be my favorite of the 3 releases. It just kind of came together. We were all able to, get it there and bring in some really great ideas last minute, and so I'm really happy with it. I'm really proud of it. I hope people like it. Yeah, after this same tour that we're on goes to the UK and Europe mid-January of next year. Really, really pumped to do that. And then the rest of next year, we're trying to take a little bit slower. We have a lot of festivals that we'll be playing, but, kind of as I mentioned earlier, try to take some time to just be home a little bit more and focus on some other projects a little bit or whatever it is. And then the following year, 2027, will be the 20-year of A Lesson in Romantics, our first album, which is, our most successful album. So I'm sure that'll be, a big year for that. And I can't say a whole lot yet about what we have planned, but we are in the process of kind of planning out both, musically and touring, the things that we want to do to celebrate that, because it feels like a big moment.
Yeah.
So that'll certainly be a busy year. And then past that, who knows? But that's about as far out as we can start to look at it right now.
Well, that sounds awesome. Well, I'm personally looking really forward to kind of hearing this final EP that rounds off the trilogy, and looking forward to you guys coming over in the UK. And it's been a whirlwind year for you guys, so I think you're due a rest as well. But hey, I want to thank you for coming on to the channel, Derek, and I want to wish you the best of this leg of the tour and the best of luck with the release of the final part of the trilogy. Thanks a lot, Derek. Appreciate your time, mate.
Yeah, Jay, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It was great to talk to you.